All right, all right. Grace, mercy, and we're live. Grace, mercy, and peace from him who is and what is to come very soon, I'm certain. This is Rogue Diabetic, and welcome to the digital wilderness. So tonight we're going to cover some numerous topics, I guess. And what I want to start out with, and what I want to try to maybe even like, because it's starting to get we're getting close enough to this that it's gonna start to matter, and that's the World Health Assembly. The World Health Assembly starts on Monday. Now, as of the last time I checked, and we'll check in again, they were still posturing like this pandemic treaty isn't like in the bag, when in fact I believe that it is, and so we'll see. We will know roughly a lot more a week from tomorrow night. What exactly the status of where it's going to go, if the member states are going to adopt it, if they're going to try to get ratification from the Senate, or if they're just going to call it a presidential agreement. If I were a betting man right now, I would say that they're just going to call it a presidential agreement, because that way they don't even have to take it to Congress. The Republicans can don't have to cave. They can stand their ground without ever having without them ever having to go on record in a vote against it. Okay, so and it's totally ridiculous. I tried to show that to you guys in a video once about how they say that since the Paris Climate Accord, for example, was a mix of binding and non-binding, had a mix of binding and non-binding provisions, that meant that they could call it a presidential agreement. But then once it became a presidential agreement, it becomes a treaty without ratification, because not all the provisions are binding. So the logical argument, argument that I would make, is that if it includes any provisions that are binding, then that automatically requires ratification from the Senate. But they're just going to say whatever is true is true. Our Constitution has been trampled on. I mean, it's of no effect anymore. Jefferson knew. He was he was a secret society member. He was an occultist. He wasn't a Christian. He's said to be a deist, whatever that is. But anyway, so yeah, they're gonna but Jefferson said that that if because of the Supreme Court and judicial review, that the Constitution becomes a thing of wax that can just be molded into whatever 9 judges say it is. So that's where this is going. Do I have anybody on yet? Say hi in the chat if you're on. It looks like I have somebody on. Now, I'll set that aside for a little bit. So then the next thing is going to be, oh, right. But I mean, but as far as that goes, I mean, it's like more recently, it's just gotten to the point where, yeah, there's not hardly even a pretense that the Constitution is something that's that absolutely protects people's rights. That basically the government can just arbitrarily decide when and where they protect these rights, and when and where they apply. They don't apply uniformly. They don't apply all the time. They're just like whenever the government doesn't want to censor speech, grab guns, quarter troops on private property. Whenever they want to do that, they can do it. But it's like the First, Second, Third Amendment are only in force when the government says they are. But when they don't say they are, then they're not. And the same with the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth, to do all the due process rights. Then the seventh right, the Seventh Amendment, which is the right to sue somebody. Okay, so like say somebody made a medical treatment that was supposed to prevent something, like a prophylaxis, to prevent, and taking it was supposed to prevent a disease or an illness. If a company were to do that, and then they were to, but then later it was discovered that this medical therapy actually causes illness, and it does it in a way where it causes, I mean, even if it only caused it sometimes, even if there was still like, if it was so little, if the risk of harm was so low, somebody who was harmed by it still should have the right to sue for compensation. Okay, but the government claims that would be like, if they let people sue, product manufacturers for the harm that they did in certain specified instances, a certain group of companies is exempt basically from the Seventh Amendment. It's totally unconstitutional. It's totally against the Seventh Amendment. Then you've got the Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment. That's so vaguely broad that anything could be said to be cruel and unusual punishment. I mean, although, I mean, it's like, but it's the core rights really are the Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendment. Those are the most important. The government just can't go around taking your shit and locking you up unless they follow a due process. And the First, Second, and Third Amendments are pretty important too. The right to self-defense is the Second Amendment. And the First Amendment is the right to say whatever the fuck you want. Now, they say, well, you can't scream fire in a crowded theater, and that's true. But I mean, yeah, no, it's not. It doesn't give you the right to disturb the peace, to do other things. But I mean, it gives you the right to insult politicians for sure, and it gives you the right to criticize authorities broadly, in general, whether they're elected or unelected. So, and then there's the 10th Amendment that was supposed to, all powers not delegated to the federal government were reserved for the states and the people, respectively. So, unless there was something in the Constitution, in the body of the Constitution, that specified that the government had a certain power, it didn't have the power. But that didn't mean that the state governments didn't have that power. They had the power, like the power to regulate, medical procedures, or the power to regulate, to statutorily define marriage is another one. Now, interestingly enough, back in the olden days, the whole friction, the whole rub was there's the full faith and credit clause, which means if I get married in Iowa, Nebraska has to recognize that marriage. If I get married in Missouri to someone who's a resident of Missouri, then the state, Nebraska, has to recognize that marriage. Same as if two people who live out or are residents of states other than Nevada go to Las Vegas and they get married there, every other state in the union has to recognize that marriage. So it potentially, so the rub there was like with certain with gay marriage, was that there was going to be that there could potentially be states like California that could legalize gay marriage, and then Nebraska technically would have to, would change the definition of marriage from one man and one woman to one man or to two people or whatever. but the California could, define marriage differently from Nebraska, but Nebraska would still have to recognize it. And I guess when it came to that, I was always kind of on the fence, but I kind of leaned towards the position that Nebraska would be. I mean, there was but there's some ambiguities. I mean, because the whole thing that the people that were against recognizing those types of union as marriage was that is that marriage is by definition one man, one woman, and so I mean that was kind of a point where reasonable minds could differ, in my opinion. But yet at the same time, I mean, there's only one ruling can be in effect at any one time. So, but so that little rabbit trail. But basically, our Constitution's wrecked, and they're going to do whatever with this pandemic treaty coming up. They're going to do whatever they want to do. Okay, and the Biden administration is going to go along with it. Now, the next question is whether the Trump whether a Trump administration would go along with it. Well, I'm going to table that discussion for right now. Okay, but other than to say, if this treaty goes into effect, in June or July, then there's still 6 months. August, September, October, November, December, January, until a Trump administration would even have the opportunity to pull us out. And he's not. But it's good. We'll go into that a little bit more later on. So I want to get some of these tabs closed out. So this is a little Google search I did. 119 billion. There's some numerology. That's the backwards 9/11. That was when Jesus was born. If you convert the calendar that we have today, which is called the Gregorian calendar. I guess I got to share my screen. So if you converted the Gregorian calendar into the Julian calendar, again, it would be on. Or if you squared them up, it would be if you started moving backwards from when they changed over from the Julian to the Gregorian. Jesus was born on 9/11. Of course, there's 9/11, 2001. There's one. It's all mocking. It's all mockery of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And 9/11 is the backwards. Or 119 is the backwards 9/11. So now I can close that one out. This is an interesting article. Okay, so Trump did a speech earlier tonight in the Bronx, and I was just kind of libertarians invite the Republican nominee to speak in the convention, unless he's going to be the nominee of the Libertarians. And we'll listen to a little bit of it later on, but I just wanted to show you this article first. The presidential debates are in June and September. There's going to be 2 presidential debates. They had previously been scheduled for September and October, which is traditionally when they normally hold those types of debates. I don't know why, I mean, but this is having a debate in June. Having a debate in June is they haven't even. They're both just the president. Neither one of them have the nomination yet. Am I sharing the screen? Oh, I guess I better share the screen. Hey. There we go. Biden and Trump trading barbs agreed to 2 presidential debates. This is completely irregular for them to have a June 27th debate, to have a debate that early. And let's see. Let's do this. Let's do a little Google search. When is the Republican National Convention? Oh my gosh, it was just there. There we go. Scheduled to be held July 15th to July 18th. So talk about I think it was June 27th. So we're talking a full 2 weeks, 3 full 2 weeks after this first debate. Right, and then there's the trial, then there's the Trump hush money trial, which is getting set to go to the jury here pretty soon. So, I mean, why you would be having a debate until they were formally nominated doesn't make any sense to me. Now, if you want, since there's early voting that starts in September, they could start these debates sooner than they were planning on, which was September 16th. That was when they were going to. That's when they were going to do the debates. Is September 16th. That was when they were going to do the first one. But since since people start vote, since there's already people that are voting. People are already casting mail-in ballots or already sending in mail-in ballots. Not very many. I think it's just in one state. And it's barely started. But the problem is they're but then by the time you get to the third debate, then there's almost everybody's voting because there's this voting goes on for 2 months now. So I can see pushing up a little bit, to that, at least starting them at the end of August, but having one in June. Before either party has even formally nominated their candidate, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to me. So, what else do we got? So we've got massive turnout for a rally in the Bronx. Here's what it means with Jesse Kelly. Okay, we can listen to a little bit of this. A little bit of Megan. I used to have a crush on Megan before I woke up. She was my favorite Fox News person. Although I remember when Trump ran in 2016 at the first Republican debate in the primaries. Megyn Kelly asked him this really aggressive question, and her and Trump got in a little spat, and they were at odds with each other but now I guess it's all forgotten because now Megyn seems to me kind of just a Trump tool.
The voting public right now, there are rallies and there are chants and there's cheers and there's great video and I love Trump and whatnot. But it does not translate into power, and power is what actually matters. 1,000 people on the streets in the Bronx to talk about how much they love Trump and how much they hate AOC. AOC sails to re-election every single time, and Donald Trump will not win the Bronx in the upcoming presidential election.
It's a storm we got yesterday morning here in the Northeast and in New York. So Trump goes to the Bronx. AOC is publicly rejoicing at the massive storm we got yesterday morning here in the Northeast and in New York, where it was lightning and it was thunder and it was just a complete downpour. And she was saying God is good on Twitter. And then like a phoenix, the sun rose from the ashes, the cloud parted, the rain stopped, and all the people crowded in the Bronx, New York, to see Donald Trump. Then she had the nerve, AOC, to say, well, I can't wait to hear from my fellow Bronxites about how they really feel about Donald Trump. And here is some of that, SOT 44.
Did you ever expect Donald Trump to come to the South?
Not really. No, never. Nobody else, I think, had done this. I think it's a good thing.
I think I definitely am surprised. I don't think I would have, expected him to come to the Bronx. So I didn't expect it, to be honest, right here at Cortona Park in the South Bronx. But us people, we love Trump.
I don't know of any president that's ever come to the Bronx. Period.
Yeah, did you ever expect him to come here?
No, not at all. Not at all. And I'm so excited.
No, we never expected him to come here. But it's not like they say. Not everybody dislikes him. We love him here. We're glad he showed up.
So it wasn't a good day for AOC. And then when asked about her in particular, it went even more south. Stop 45.
AOC says if you're not a Democrat, you don't belong here in the Bronx. Right. What do you say?
I disagree with that.
I don't think she should be here in the Bronx. I actually don't know any Democrats living in the Bronx.
Look, AOC, look at the tremendous support for Mr. Donald J. Trump. You need to tell her and she need to stay out the Bronx because look at all the people around. Everybody's here for Trump. I am a Democrat, and I belong here.
And who are you voting for?
Donald J. Trump.
What has AOC done for the Bronx?
She's done nothing for the Bronx. Nothing. Nothing's changed. Nothing's gotten any better.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Let her come to the Bronx and let her come among us people that struggle. She doesn't even know what struggle is.
Credit to Fox News for that second soundbite, Sarah Hernandez.
All right, you guys. So, yeah, but I mean, this guy was right. And then he goes on to say, that at the end of the day, so AOC is going to sail to re-election. Although she has caught some static from some of her constituents for supporting the war in Israel and the war in Ukraine, for funding of the Ukraine war and funding of the war against the Palestinians, the war of aggression that Israel is conducting against the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. So, I mean, and the dude's right. I mean, it's like at the end of the day, she's gonna win by a landslide, and Trump is not gonna win the Bronx. I mean, but I mean, the interesting thing that shows is that even in the Bronx, there's some people out there that are Trump supporters. So on a trial that's like blatantly political, this hush money trial, and I'm not defending Trump whatsoever at all. I mean, just to tell you the truth, the fact that he paid, as a voter, it's one thing to say he belongs in jail for paying a hush money settlement. I mean, and that's like, settlements aren't against the law, and so I'm trying to figure out what the crime is supposed to be anyway. But I mean, as a Christian and I'm a conservative supposedly, do you really want a candidate that's paying hush money out to porn stars? I mean, I wouldn't. Oh, hey, Steve. Oh, it looks like I was buffering. Oh no, my screen share is black, so we can't see what you're sharing. I think they might be planning something for these debates in June, some kind of psyop. Oh, that sucks. I still got somebody in here though, so I'm gonna keep going. If you're still on, if anybody in here is still on, let me know. Let me know in the chat if you like when I do these screen shares, whether you can see it or not. This is like so frustrating that I can never get enough. I don't know if I need more bandwidth or what exactly. So what are we going to do next? Okay, so we're going to move on from Trump. I wanted to play a little bit of his debate. Or not his debate. Trump gave a speech at the Libertarian Convention, and it was just so bizarre. I'll play a little bit for you. We're just gonna skip over that. It sounded like he might have been getting booed, but I wouldn't think that. I'm surprised he was as well received as he was, and it just didn't make any sense for them to have him speak at the Libertarian National Convention. Is he their nominee? I mean, I don't know. It was just weird. You can hear the ones playing, but can't see anything. Okay. Okay. Well, I guess I don't know. That's a bummer. Let me try something real quick. Let me try another share. Okay, this is like an entry from the Strong's Concordance. It's the 1752, and it's from the Hebrew word "der." It's a masculine noun, and it means ball, roundabout, burn. And then it says outline of biblical circle ball. Okay, so I watched this debate the other day, and this is Isaiah 42:20, or this is Isaiah 22:18 is where you find the word "der." And it seems like from the context, he's obviously, it was like, I mean, a ball fits better. But then then in Isaiah 42, they use the circle of the earth. They translate a different word. Kug is the circle of the earth, not the ball of the earth. And the other day I was watching that debate, and this guy pulled up a dictionary entry from the 1823 Merriam-Webster dictionary that said that the first entry was a ball is a three-dimensional, or no, that a circle was a two-dimensional shape with lines at equal points from a center point. I can pull that up too. I can pull up like a round plane whose boundary, the circumference, consists of points equidistant from a fixed point, the center. Now, I'm pretty sure that the first entry was something to that effect in the Merriam-Webster, in the 1823 Merriam-Webster. But apparently the second entry was, they defined it that in popular usage, it could also refer to a ball. So they won't like, it was totally bizarre though. It was totally bizarre. We'll maybe back to that. That sucks. Yeah, I mean, I think that like from the context of the yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why they took it out though. But the second they defined it it was the first entry. You know how when you look up a word in the dictionary, there's like, the first definition will have a 1, and then they'll have if there's multiple definitions to a word. So it was the second entry, and it said in popular usage. That was the way the entry started. So it's like, I mean, even if that's like, I mean, just because it was used, people were using circle as a ball in English to mean ball. That doesn't mean that Isaiah was using the Hebrew word for circle as a ball. I mean, I'm sure the King James translators, which would have been like 1611, was when the first King James version came out. Did you see it? You saw Shelley and it was Shelley and Whitsitt. that debated on that. Yeah, it was crazy. It was a stretch. I think that was where Austin said it was a stretch. That debate was like, I mean, and then at the very end, Shelley was like hadn't like engaged in any ad hominem throughout the whole debate, except the guy that did the intro was like just talking smack at the beginning about flat earthers. But then so Pastor Shelley doesn't do any of that throughout the whole debate. After Owen called him out on it, he waits until his closing statement, and then it's the same arguments. Flat Earth is stupid, even though that's like not really an argument. So, did you watch the debate on BitChute, or did you watch it on not BitChute? The debate was on Rumble, and then Austin did like a debate review on his channel. Right? Beyond the Great Ice Wall, for sure. Yeah, there's definitely something out there that's, I mean, the Earth definitely isn't what they claim it is. It's not a ball. I mean, that's dumb. That's what's dumb. So Martin Luther, openly mocked flat Earth. I mean, that's another thing. The Protestant reformers. I mean, there was nobody. See, there's this story that's like circulates around, and I was like, and I remember being taught this in college, that I remember when I was a kid, when I was like in grade school, they taught us that the reason why nobody would give Columbus any money to explore, to try to find a way to the Spice Islands to find another route, a sea route to basically Asia, to East Asia, was because everybody thought the Earth was flat and that he was going to sail off the edge. Now, that's not true, but they changed their story, and later on they started saying, oh, well, everybody knew the Earth was a ball by then. And all educated people, or most educated people, knew that the Earth was a ball by, you'll hear people say, like, all the way back to the 1st century, like to Eratosthenes. But the fact of the matter is going all the way into like the 1800s, the vast majority of scholars believed that the Earth was flat. The vast majority of educated people. And there were fewer, and people weren't as educated back then, which really doesn't mean anything, since the education in this world is mostly nonsense. But Martin Luther, this is what Luther said about Copernicus. There was mention of a certain new astrologer who wanted to prove that the Earth moves, not the sky, the sun, and the moon. This would be as if somebody were riding on a cart or in a ship and imagined that he was standing still while the Earth and the trees were moving. So it goes now. Whoever wants to be clever must agree. Whoever wants to be clever must agree with something that others esteem. He must do something of his own. This is what the fellow does who wishes to turn the whole of astronomy upside down. Even in these things that are thrown into disorder, I believe the Holy Scripture. For Joshua commanded the sun and earth to stand still, or commanded the sun to stand still and not the earth. And what Calvin John Calvin was even like, John Calvin basically said he was demon possessed. Let's see if I can find his. Let's see if I can find this. I just found it the other day. But no, he condemned it. He condemned it strongly. He basically said he was that Copernicus was demon possessed, and there was heresy to say that not the other way around. It wasn't heresy to believe that the Earth was flat. It was heresy to believe that the Earth was a ball, because it so flatly contradicted Scripture, and then it was stupid. So let's see what else. Oh, another thing about the whole flat Earth thing that these people somebody needs to ask one of these pastors that believe that especially like Shelley and Anderson and Hovind and all these young Earth creationist pastors that are heliocentrists, is because they say they don't believe in the Big Bang. But that creates all sorts of problems, because in order for their model to work, the universe has to be expanding. And if it's expanding, that means if you go back in time, it's contracting. And if you go back far enough, it comes all the way into, a ball, maybe like the size of my fist. And then at the Big Bang, everything starts flying apart. Now they say they reject that, but if they don't but then that means that when God created the universe, he would have had to create, in a certain size, less 6,000 years of expansion, or 6,000 years less of expansion. You have to subtract 6,000 years worth of expansion, and that would be the initial size of the universe. And if you look at the Genesis narrative, it just doesn't match. It just doesn't make sense. The dry land doesn't even appear until the third day. And then the stars. So, and then they say the firmament is the sky that separates the waters above from the waters below. But that definitely only makes sense on a flat Earth. So this is my model of the universe. Now it's crude. I realize that. And it says Missouri. But this is basically my model. Okay, this is the firmament. Okay, and then it's got like a base that it sits on top of. This dome, this globe, it is a globe. It's a snow globe. Now, if you'll notice, there's some sort of fluid inside the globe. So, and the only way there could be this fluid inside the globe, I don't know if it's water or what it is exactly, but liquids and gas are both fluids, and in order for them to be and they take the shape of their container. Okay, so if you're gonna have gas pressure, it's gotta have a container. Or if you're gonna have any sort of fluid that's bunched, that's held together, it's got to be contained. So it's the and if you poured water on top of this, it would fall off. Let's see. It says we are indeed living in a domed world with other domes. This is Valiant Thor that are unknown to the masses of the known world we call Earth. In time only truth can stand. An early church father in the 500s wrote the Christian topography of cosmos, an Egyptian monk translated from the Greek, and was fighting against the spherical Earth. I just started reading it. So when was this? Do you use your illusions? Do you know when this church father wrote this book? Because that's like, and what was his name? I'd like to look into that. Because that was another thing that Shelley was saying in the debate is he was like, I mean, as far as I can tell, this doesn't even like, nobody even considers it until Copernicus, which would have been the 1500s. So you're saying there's this guy all the way back into the 500s that was saying the Earth is flat. And then it was covered by a dome. I think that's what everybody thought, basically all the way up until the 1500s. And even then, at first, the people, the scholars, the Christian scholars, the Catholic scholars, the Protestant scholars, the Reformers, they all rejected it. So, and I don't know if there's probably like I don't know what I lost my train of thought. I don't know what I was going to say. I'm going to search the title of that. So the title is The Christian Topography of the Cosmos. The Christian Topography is a 6th century work, one of the earliest essays in scientific geography written by a Christian author. It originally consisted of, this is the Wikipedia. We'll read the Wikipedia. Written by a Christian author. It originally consisted of 5 books written by Cosmas. Oh, it's Cosmas. Indico Pleistes, and expanded to 10 and eventually to 12 books at around 550 AD. Cosmas Indico Pleistes, the author of Christian Topography, before the idea that the world is flat, originally written in Greek with illustrations and maps. The view of the flatness of the world may have been influenced by some Jewish and Eastern contemporaries. While most Christians of the same period maintained the earth as a sphere, I don't know if I agree with that. So let's look at what they're citing is a Okay, so they're actually citing the book for their claim that most Christians thought the earth was a sphere at that time. That's odd. That doesn't seem right to me. The work advances to the idea that the world is flat and that the heavens form the shape of a box with a curved lid, and especially attacks the idea that the heavens were spherical and in motion, now known as the geocentric model of the universe. The author cites passages from the Christian scriptures, which he interprets originally in order to support his thesis, and attempts to argue down the idea of a spherical Earth by stigmatizing it as pagan. An early surviving reference to the work of Patriarch Photios I of Constantinople in the 9th century AD. Photius condemns the style and syntax of the text, as well as the honesty of the author. More recent authors tend to agree with Photius on the stylistic points, but to find the work generally available for geographical and generally reliable for geographical and historical references. So, for example, the nonsense of the monk was nevertheless mingled with the practical knowledge of the traveler. Okay. Edward Gibson, for example, said the nonsense of the monk was nevertheless mingled with practical knowledge of the traveler, and used it in writing the history of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. The topography is often erroneously cited as evidence that the Christianity introduced the idea of flat Earth into the world and brought in the age of ignorance. The latter pages of this work are devoted to rebutting the criticism of his fellow monks. He repeatedly denounces those reprobate Christians who pervert their perverse folly or downright wickedness to adopt the miserable pagan belief that the earth and heavens are spherical and that there are antipodes on whom the rain must fall up. The place of cosmos in history has been sometimes misconceived. The work is not, as it has been called in the earlier years of the century, the chief authority of the Middle Ages in geography. Fox, on the whole, its influence is only slightly and occasionally traceable. Its author stated his position as an article of Christian faith, but even in those times, there was anything but a general agreement with his positive conclusions. The subtleties of cosmos were left to the Greeks for the most part. The Western geographers who pursued his line of thought were usually content to stop short at the merely negative dogmas of the Latin fathers, and no great support was given to the constructive tabernacle system of the Indian merchant. Yet, after all, the Christian topography must always be remarkable. It is one of the earliest essays in scientific or strictly theoretic geography within the Christian area written by a Christian thinker. That's interesting. I'll have to see if I can maybe dig up a copy of that. That is not something that I knew. I did not realize that. But the one thing that I did notice is that apparently okay, check this out. I don't know, I'm not going to be able to show it to you because my screen share isn't working. But I showed you my my ball. But there's other people that think that it's not a ball, but it's more like the Superdome, where there are where there's a wall, a circular wall around the outside, and then it's covered by something like a dome, but then it doesn't actually end up curving back around. And I don't know if that's what they're arguing about. And I guess I don't know. But I mean, apparently they're making a distinction between geocentrism and because geocentrism isn't heliocentrism or Big Bang cosmology. But apparently they're making a distinction between this Cosmos guy was saying something, apparently making a distinction between his belief in the geocentric model, where apparently, I don't know, I guess I don't. I always kind of thought that The impression that I was starting to get was that basically everybody up until like the 15th and 16th century believed that the Earth was basically flat and covered by a dome. And if it was a globe, it was like a snow globe. And then the bodies that were in heaven weren't like they might be balls, but they weren't millions of miles away and in a vacuum. So I don't know. I don't know. The land, aka Earth, was circular, but the foundations and the measurements were rectangular. His name was Cosmos. The link took me to a bunch of books digitized by church fathers. I don't think most of them thought it either, but I think it was being pushed. There are plates there too with drawings of what he thought it was, and even animals like unicorn. So when you say animals like unicorn, are you talking about like a horse with a spiral horn? Because I've heard people say that there's animals like that were more like rhinoceroses. Because you know how a rhinoceros they have two horns, I think, on their forehead. Yeah, and so but I've heard people think that there's a possibility that there was an animal that was more like a rhinoceros that just had one horn. Vital information is mostly kept away from average citizens. What ends up in the hands of the public internet is diluted to the point of uselessness. Yeah, that's about right. I mean, you really have to dig into it and get to the source documents, which is something that I'm kind of lazy about. Sometimes I have an over reliance on Wikipedia, and I don't do enough. Like I should read the books that Copernicus wrote and that Galileo wrote, and even like in Principia by Newton. Newton was the gravity guy. The guy that discovered gravity because an apple fell on his head. Like an apple had never fallen from a tree. Like that was the first time in 4,000 years of human history. Or 5,000 years of human history that an apple fell to the ground. He has a ring in it too. Are you talking about like an ice ring? I mean, like what I want to do, what I think would be cool to do is to make snow globes, but make them a little bit bigger than this and put an azimuthal projection map. That I can show you. Do like a snow globe. I don't know if you guys can see my screen. I have my screensaver is the Gleason projection, the azimuthal projection. And I guess my model is what I think of it when I think of the Earth is I think of it as a snow globe, except when you look down on it, you would see the circle of the Earth. So I've heard those theories too before that there's not that there's all this land beyond the 60th parallel. But I don't know. I mean, since we can't go down there, it's hard to say. I mean, unless you could actually go down there and explore it. It's hard to say. It's hard to rule it out completely, but it's also hard to say definitively, for me at least. I mean, there still has to be something to contain the atmosphere, so there has to be a firmament. And then if you're like if you're pushing it all the way, I mean, so if there's all these other lands around the, there's Antarctica, which is basically an ice wall, but there's a way to get through it to outside of it. And there's these other continents that are in a ring around that inner ring. So that means that the firmament would have to extend out eventually. I mean, at some point it would have to come and meet the surface to close the system. All there is. Have you ever seen an around world trip from north to south? Have I? No. No. And then Use Your Illusion says all there is really is speculation and some maps and stories that really can't be substantiated. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about that. I can see there would be lands within the ice wall that have been hidden. That's possible too. I mean, the Pacific Ocean is huge. I mean, there's no way that we would know. There's no way that they couldn't easily hide that from the average person. If there was more, significant pieces of land that are uninhabited. All right. It says, watching from Los Alamos National Laboratory. Isotope production facility. Have a blessed night. That's Valiant Thor. What are you doing down in Los Alamos? That's pretty crazy. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect to have somebody in my stream that was at in Los Alamos. So I don't know, you guys. I've been going for about an hour. I'm starting to get tired. So I think I'm going to wrap it up. So keep your eye on this pandemic treaty. That's going to be the next thing. And then the next pandemic day. And then the next time there's a pandemic, it's pretty much going to be totalitarian control by a one world government. So be ready for that. Be ready to stand your ground on that. Okay, because this is like this world isn't all there is. There's something after. Okay, Jesus is coming back. He's going to stop this pretty soon. It's just a matter of us believing that and hanging on until he does. All right, good night, you guys.